Barker here at the Little Butcher. Today we are cutting up a tenderloin and a prime rib to get ready for the holidays. Stay
Hey, Taryn.
Hey, Jay.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about today, and I just want to welcome
Yes.
everyone to Sysco's Virtual Kitchen, the Little Butcher, as we call this episode. And first of all, before we get into this, I got to tell everyone this because I just found this out, but you got to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook channel. Hit the subscribe button. I'm going to do like the YouTubers do in the point in the corner. I don't know how they do that. But
Here?
yeah, exactly. Here or there. But anyways, I'm going to let you talk about this. I'm going to ask some questions along the way, but I just want to thank everyone for joining us. And we're going to learn a little bit about tenderloin and prime rib today.
Sure are. Yeah, so we've got our Sysco's Butcher Block tenderloin. These ones were coming 4 in a case to me, which is not a crazy amount. And yeah, we're going to start with the tenderloin. I think people are often kind of afraid of the tenderloin, but I think it's just mainly because of the price point. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid, just be gentle and take your time, especially when you're first starting to do it. Then once you get used to it, you can do one in 5 to 10 minutes. So it's not so scary. So when I start, I kind of start by pulling things apart with my hands a little bit before I kind of get in with my knife, because then you can kind of see where the muscle structure lays and pull off some of the extra fat and stuff without having to even use your knife. So I'm coming in already and I'm just kind of using my hands, breaking things apart, anything I can kind of get my fingers underneath here and just kind of pull off, right? That saves you from maybe making an accidental knife slice that you do not want to do. So using our hands first, taking your time, being gentle. So I've got most of that fat kind of off of the top and I've pulled the side part. So this is called the chain that kind of sits along the side. It does have some nice meat in it, but it's not really great on maybe a steak or a roast per se. So you definitely want to clean that off. So I've pulled as much as I could off with my knife first and then, start with my hands. Then I'm going to come with my knife and I'm just
Taryn,
using
do people grind that up for burgers and stuff?
So yeah, so you could absolutely do that. That's kind of what we usually do at the store because we have lots of other meat we can use for kebabs and different things. But if you're not doing so many different cuts, you can go through this little piece and pull out the actual meat. So there's kind of gristle and fat on either side. But once you get into it, it's decent meat actually. I did a couple other pieces earlier, and I actually kind of ended up cutting some of it up just into kind of little. Yeah, so
is that off of one? Is that off of one tenderloin?
This is off of 2. Yeah, it's not. It's some other pieces as well, but I just kind of cut the chain bit into kind of not even 1 inch. I'd say like 1/2 inch pieces, and to me that would make a beautiful like stroganoff or some sort of dish like that. I love stroganoff, especially in the winter time. And then you can kind of cook it a little bit longer to break down any little connective tissue bits that are in that chain. So I think stroganoff's a great application for that. So I'll put that off to the side. If I have time, I can show you kind of how to trim it. But then the next step on here would be to kind of clean off some of the extra fat. So we're going to come on the sides here. Again, I'm going to use my knife now.
Tenderloin is typically a muscle in the cow. Hopefully I say this right.
Yes.
That doesn't. No, I was getting to it. It doesn't move a lot, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be very tender because it doesn't move a lot. But on the opposite end of that, it doesn't have as much flavor and fat marbling because it doesn't move a lot.
Really? Now, is there people think that it
Yeah.
does?
I mean, customers don't really know
Okay.
unless they start asking, I think.
Okay.
So if your staff are able to tell them a little bit about it, I mean, it is the absolute like one of the most tender. Some people say the flat iron is just as tender as well, but this is one of the biggest, most tender pieces in the animal. So that's what your customer's looking for. Then that's what they're looking for, right? They don't care
Okay.
about the flavor or the fat. So yeah, so I trimmed off most of the fat on the sides of this. And I'm actually going to turn it onto the bottom now. This one is pretty clean, but there is usually quite a bit of like shingled fat on the bottom. It's okay to grind as well, like you were saying. So you definitely want to start, making a little pile and thinking about what kind of things sell in your restaurant. Can you sell, a burger? Can you sell rice bolognese sauce? Can you sell whatever with ground meats, right? Taco
Yeah.
bowls or something.
Well, I
If
think,
not, yeah,
like, I think a lot of people may be able to put a little bit in their burger,
yeah, yeah,
right? To cut some of to add maybe some value to it.
absolutely. Yeah, especially if it's something like the pieces from the bottom that I just trimmed and the fat on the outside of this, you
Mm-hmm.
can't really turn into anything else. So it would just be for grinding or maybe to put into a broth or something. So
Oh, yeah, broth.
yeah, right. So that's another, you don't want your broth to be too fatty either, but so I cleaned fat, top and bottom. It's all cleaned up. So now we are left with this big piece of silver skin on the top, right? That kind of is the hardest or the more kind of intricate part, I'd say, to trim. So what I like to do, I kind of did it already here. But what I do is I'll usually start about 1/3 of the way down. I'll get my knife just right underneath that silver skin. You want to keep it as
Yeah.
close to the surface as you can. Just angling the knife up slightly. Whoop. See, that's how I did it. And then you just kind of run your knife
Yeah.
along the silver skin until you break through. And then we'll turn it the opposite way and then continue my stroke removing the silver skin. So ideally you want zero meat. That's pretty clean.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can just very easily take your knife, run across and get your little bits of trim meat there too. So that
Taryn,
could be.
there. So, that would take a long time to figure that out before, because I'm sure the executive chefs are not cutting tenderloin right now. It's probably someone that's very inexperienced, right? Or someone new. It's not a master butcher.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I feel like once you did, if you did a full case of 4 of these,
Mm-hmm.
you would get pretty used to where the things are pretty quickly, right?
Okay.
It's not so much. It's a little bit of fat trimming, pulling any extra bits off that you don't like, and then the silver skin. So I think what maybe could be a good thing if you have more amateur chefs preparing your cuts would be obviously to show them one first and leave the finished product the way you would like it to be, so they can see exactly how it should look in the end. And they're not coming to ask you 100 times, like, oh, a little bit more here or a little bit more there. They just have that piece to look at. So yeah, so we got that silver skin mostly off now. So a few options for the restaurant. Here at the shop, we just start staking this. We don't really sell a lot of tenderloin roasts, but in the restaurant, you could easily roast this whole piece. I would just suggest, you can roast the whole piece if that's what you want to do, right? The only thing I would do would just be to kind of butterfly the tail at the end here because it gets quite a bit smaller.
Can you show us
that? Yeah.
Oh. So that's what you're doing. You're tucking that in, and really?
Yeah. So we'll just kind of butterfly the tail, tuck it under, and then you just tie it. You tie it all nice and tight so it's a little bit more even. Otherwise, you're going to have, totally well done, overcooked little tail bit there. This way, you'll get a little bit more of a medium rare that you're going for, hopefully.
That's cool.
Yeah. So if you don't want to roast it whole, then I would definitely trim off this tail. This is a beautiful piece for making steak tartare, or what we've done in the past with our tails especially around the holidays, is we make little like beef Wellington parcels, we call them. So it's like puff pastry, like you would put around a Wellington normally. But then I did some earlier, we just chop up kind of finely the tail bits. So it's maybe a little bit thicker than you or bigger than you would do for tartare, but you just chop it up and then you make your duxelle. You add your mustard. You could put a layer of prosciutto in there too. So it's basically every ingredient you would use in a normal Wellington, but you just make like an appetizer out of it, right? So you could do a little, you could either make a puff pastry dish with the meat inside, or you could actually fold it over and make a little parcel out of it too. So a couple easy ideas, I think, for the trimming meats here that we'll have. So the next part of the tenderloin would be the Chateaubriand, the center cut loin. That's kind of the most prized piece of it. It is the most beautiful part of it. So you end up with kind of, I'd say, 1.5 pounds-ish, maybe 2 pounds at the most if it's a bigger one, Chateaubriand centerpiece. Again, you could just roast this. You might get like 6 servings out of it if you're kind of slicing them, a 1/2 inch thick. This would make a great Wellington as well if you were doing a party and you wanted to do a few Wellingtons for a party of 20 or something. That would be the piece you'd want to use for that. And you could also just cut it into steaks. So I did a few earlier. We ended up with, 4 really nice, thick, about 6-ounce steaks.
Can you bring those up? Can you come around, beautiful. Taryn?
Yeah.
We need a close-up of how beautiful those are.
Aww. But nice and thick, right? They're basically 2 inches, I'd say. About 6 ounces. So not a ton of marbling, right? A little bit. But again,
that's normal, right?
That's what tenderloin is. Yeah. I think unless you're getting Wagyu, of course, or a prime cut that you'll maybe have a little bit more, but the tenderloin's still always going to be quite lean, but tender. That's the key part. So we can leave this one whole now, so you can see the difference, right? You can either keep it whole and have a nice little roast or a Wellington, or you can cut it into some beautiful steaks too. So
wow.
Yeah, so now we're just left with the end piece, the head of the tenderloin here. In the shop, we just, again, cut this into steaks. They are in a little bit of different shape in the end. It kind of ends up being like it's hard to see, sorry, like a little 3 kind of, right? So it's not a perfect circle, but easily what you can do is just take some string and just tie it so it becomes more of a perfect little circle. So it kind of looks in the end basically the same as the other ones I've cut. So no problems there. If you're serving it to a table and there's 3 different tenderloin, one gets this one, maybe not, the best looking, but all you have to do is just put a little bit of string, just get one little string, and then just tie it around the edge. I like to do a little slip knot kind of when I'm tying tenderloin because it is so tender. I find when I start slip knot. So it's just like a knot around a knot around the string. And
you do it with a bow, don't you?
I might if I'm displaying it in my case, but for just cooking it, you definitely don't need to do anything.
I would do a bow. I would do a bow just because I could probably get $2 more.
A bow for Jay.
I could do a bow because it'd give me $2 more.
You can charge more per pound for the bow.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think they usually serve it with the string on. I think restaurants usually cut the string off.
Okay,
but I could be changing. There we go. Bow. Okay, so that's easy to do, right? So if you want to cut this all into steaks, and that's the only thing you really want to do, you're not doing roasts or anything, you can just keep cutting and then just tie them up a little bit to look more similar to the other one. So in restaurant, a lot too, I do see this one seamed then. So you'll take these 2 side pieces off. So we're just going to kind of follow where the natural seam is. There's some kind of gristle and fat that lays in there, so you can see where that cuts. So we have one piece, and then same thing on the other side. Follow where that gristle and fat kind of lays. So there's 2 pieces, and then we have our middle piece. So this one will make at least 1 perfect more steak. Another nice thick 6-ounce steak. There we go. We'll add that to our pile here. We could do a butterflied steak out of this one, possibly. That's a little bit thin. But we do this in this shop,
Let's talk a little about beef here while I have you on here. And the voices come back.
Okay.
what are you? So how long does a tenderloin usually age for? Like, what's the ideal age time around a tenderloin?
Um, it's kind of preference, but for us, we do minimum 21 days for all of our beef.
Okay.
I think
So do
that's a
we.
good spot. Yeah, I think that's a good spot where it's not so young and fresh, but you haven't gone past it and you maybe have a couple pieces that get iffy. I think with the wet aging, you have to be careful, which is what this
Mhm.
beef would be. It's vacuum sealed, so it's wet aging. Sometimes those juices can start to go off a little bit sooner. So I think 21 days is the ideal time when you're doing the wet aged beef. So yeah, I
Cool.
think a lot of grocery stores do a little bit less, but yeah, 21 I would say would be to it what to go for. So from these pieces, and so I did end up butterflying one more steak. So I cut it twice as thick as I want it to be, make an incision
Mhm.
almost to the bottom, and then you can fold it over and tie it again with the string. But again, it's basically the same shape and size as the other ones, and that can be a nice addition to your steak pile. And then these pieces I would just use for my stroganoff or for
Okay.
my stir fry or for my tartare or my Wellington parcel. So those last little pieces you get off of there are very valuable to
Cool.
make you those little sides and appetizers and things. And this is all the trim we were really left with. And the
Are
chain
you
was one
kidding
thing
me?
yeah, the chain we can get some more trim out of,
No.
so it's not bad, but basically it's just those two little piles. So really it's not so bad and it's not so scary. That took us 15 minutes, not even with a little bit of chatting in the middle. So yeah,
Wow.
so that's the tenderloin.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's break to a quick commercial. Let's get back because we're going to get into those big steaks. Is that a steak? Like, look at that thing beside you. Look at
Yes,
that. Look at that thing.
yes,
You got a
yes.
barbecue back there? You got to
No,
fire
I
up the
wish I
barbecue.
wish I did, right?
All right. We're going to come back and then we're going to talk a little more butcher's block beef. And we'll be right back with Taryn.
Sounds good.
Our table is set, and we have a seat just for you. At Sysco, we love what we do, and that is delivering success for our customers through industry-leading people, products, and solutions. Our team is the difference between good customer relationships and great ones. Your dedicated sales consultant is here to help you grow your business. They will connect you with the products, solutions, and insights you need to grow your profits, streamline your operations, and market your business. They'll offer you customized consultations with our chefs and industry specialists to answer your questions and inspire you. Our specialists can help with protein, fresh local produce, takeout and delivery solutions, and more. And if you simply need someone to answer a quick question, our Customer Connect team is just a phone call or chat message away. Sysco is at the heart of food and service and connecting the world to share food and care for one another. Join us for a seat at the table. Visit sysco.ca to learn more.
All right. We're back.
We're back. So we have our big
That's
prime
huge.
rib now. Yes. So yeah, these say would probably usually run around 20 pounds, give or take a little bit for the whole piece. So
Mm-hmm.
prime rib, bone-in ribeye, whatever it's referred to, 7 rib hanging roast.
Wow.
So what I would suggest in restaurants, you can again just roast this bad boy whole. You don't even have to trim up anything if you don't want to. If that's the way you want to serve it with a little bit more fat around it. But we're going to show you breaking it down a little bit to give you a few more options. So what I would start with just to make it more manageable, because it is such a big piece, would be to try to cut it approximately in half. So hopefully the processor has done a good job chining the bones, which means they've taken the big chunk off the top here, which allows you to be able to cut between each rib. So you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of just get your knife in there. So I'm going to separate it between 4 and 3 bones.
4 and 3. Is that always four
Four
and
and
three?
three. Yeah, because usually they come as a seven rib prime rib. So unless you have a bandsaw in your restaurant, which I'm probably sure most people don't, you'll have to pick a side, right? So
Yeah.
so we got it 4 and 3 now. I usually like to cut 4 bones on the more marbled side, which comes from or meets into the chuck and the shoulder. And then
Mm-hmm.
I leave the 3 bones on the side that is a bit leaner, which goes
Oh
into
yeah.
the loin or the strip loin. So that's the side that I'm going to leave just 3 bones on, and we'll show you what I would recommend doing with that. From the ribeye, or for the more marbled section, we're actually going to show you how to remove the bone. So you could do a slow cooked beef rib instead of maybe doing pork ribs. And then, especially if you're wanting to sell a prime rib or a ribeye, having that bone you can take off and make some money off of. It's a great way. So as you can see here, the bone kind of connects obviously around. There is a bit of a seam of fat right along here where the lip of the meat meets the ribeye. So what we're going to do when we remove the bone, so we end up with a bit of a meatier rib, is to kind of seam it out there. So we still have this beautiful ribeye. It's not going to have the lip on, but then we'll have a beautiful ribeye to sell and also meaty ribs. Nice. So if you just have a small boning knife, no problems. Usually at the shop, I would use my bigger scimitar.
I'm nervous, Taryn. I'm nervous.
But why? Don't be nervous. So I'm going to change my grip on my knife from holding it like you normally would to holding it kind of like you're going to stab something. This way you have a little bit more control when you're coming into the bones. So you kind of go.
You have more control that way, right?
Yeah. It's a more controlled around the bones, especially. So it's going to be kind of a bit of like a coming in. I'm making an incision and I'm going kind of around each bone a little bit. And then I'm going to run my fingers through there so I can kind of see the gap that I have made. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, where I'm kind of looping my knife kind of around each little bit of bone there. I'm not going so far into the meat because I want to obviously leave as much beautiful meat on that ribeye piece as I can. Okay, so I've got another incision there. You can see it's kind of starting to come apart. So I'm going to keep going. I am going to pull the bone up towards me so the meat's almost off the table. That will help when the seam starts to appear. The meat will just kind of fall away from the bone. So right now I'm keeping my knife close to the bone and I'm just doing gentle strokes, and you can see the meat's kind of just falling over back onto the table, and I'm coming into now where that seam is. So we're basically apart now.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I can run my hands through it a few times, and I have my line where I want to cut it. I basically just want to cut straight down there, and then we have this beautiful chunk of meat left on the ribs, which to me, makes they're meatier, right? It's more valuable, I'd say. A lot of processors will keep the lip on the ribeye, so you have just basically a tiny bit of meat and bone for this. So these are great when we sell them. We cook them here and then we sell them cooked. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of this extra fat off the top. But other than that, these are almost ready to rock.
You would in a restaurant, they could sell 3 of those together for an appy or something.
Yeah, totally. 2 or 3, depending how big they are. So you could either roast it whole and then cut it after, or you could pre-cut them and then roast them that way. Beautiful. I would also recommend just to remove the membrane that's on the back of here. 2 reasons. It can kind of tighten up a bit in the cooking. And then you're not going to have... It's not so hard. You'd still be able to eat around it, probably eat through it. But just for a slightly better eating experience, removing it's good. But also that is part. So we were talking about the aging of the meat. Yeah. These membranes and these bones are the things that start to go off faster, because they're on the internal part of the animal and closer to all the organ meats and everything. Okay. So they'll go off faster. So definitely removing that will help these last longer. And remove any kind of maybe little bit of smell or anything they might have coming out of the package. So that's the full rack there. I'll show you. I did cut a few up earlier.
Wow.
So we ended up with 4
those
really nice ribs. Yeah. So what I was kind of saying or thinking was you could serve 2 as a pretty good appy. They're probably huge. Yeah, it's probably almost a pound. But just when you go through the rack, the ribs can be quite a bit different size and in length, right? So cutting them into single bones, then you can mix and match and make sure that your weight's right, using a bigger one and a smaller one, and then 2 medium ones will give you a better portion control. So so I think cutting them into little pieces like that, either before or after you cook,
That'd be awesome as an
it would be
like just an
awesome,
appy or something, right? Because
right?
there'd be so much flavor in that with that fat.
Yeah, they're really good. We just put seasoning on ours here
Yeah.
when we sell them, and we sell out of them every time. So, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so then we're left with a nice ribeye now. So again, beautiful roast. This I'd say you could probably get 8 servings out of at least. Yeah, something like that, maybe even 10 depending how thin you're using it. You could use this for some prime rib ribeye sandwiches, beef dip with ribeye instead of your normal as a special holiday item, charge a little bit more for it. Just put some strings around it to make it nice and even. Or, of course, you can cut it into steaks.
Okay, just wait, Taryn.
Yeah.
Let's see how master butcher you are.
Yeah.
Can you cut a 10-ounce?
A 10-ounce steak. I don't have a scale with me.
Okay.
But, we usually
we need
cut...
to call for a scale. Get a scale. I bet you... Let's do a 10.
Can I have a scale?
Here we go.
Let's
you're a master butcher. I bet you get bang on 10.
I could probably do pretty good. We do portion quite a few things, so I have a reasonable idea. Thank you.
Here we go.
Okay, let's see. Let's see what we can do here.
little butcher. Here we go.
Put me on the spot here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Wasn't planned. Sorry.
Right? Yeah, sure.
Here we go. 10.
Okay, so usually when we do ours, we do them 1 inch. This is maybe 1 1/4. Oh, it's 13. So that's a nice size one. So the 1 inch steak would probably, right? The 1 inch steak would probably be your better bet if you're looking for.
It would cook down to a 10.
Yeah, you'd lose a little bit of it for sure. But did you ever watch that butcher show on History?
No.
Oh, they had to do so many portions.
Okay, what's that one?
That one's 10.
There you go. I was going to say.
So it just took me 1 try, 2 tries. Yeah, so 1 inches though. That's like for us in the shop. That's usually what we cut ours. We aim for ours at. Just kind of easier. Yeah.
Here's the thing I just want to share on that is that thing there, that little scale will save you millions of dollars in your restaurant.
Yes, absolutely.
And Taryn's a master butcher, and most people are cutting these are not the executive chefs or people with a lot of experience, right? So that's the best thing to buy in a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Right there.
I would, if you are cutting your own steaks, I would not go without one. You have to have one, or else your portion control is out the window. You have no idea. So
especially with this expensive meat. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so little things like, this one was 10.5. I could probably trim a little bit off the side here and use that in my grinds. You could make a ribeye burger with your prime rib and ribeye trim, right? And that's, it's not gonna cost you anymore. It's gonna add to your other pile of meat. So having that scale to trim off even a little bit is worth it. So so steaks or beautiful roasts. That's good. How are we doing for time, Jay? Do you want me to keep cutting along?
Yeah, keep cutting. We're gonna do this all day, by the way.
Okay.
It's a 24-hour beef cutting
forever.
show.
Well, I need more beef then. Okay. So the last section we have here is the leaner end. Like I was saying, it works its way into the loin, so there's not as much marbling in there. Mm-hmm. I think these ones are usually better to leave bone in. So at the shop, that's what we do too. We'll do exactly that. We'll use our ribs and take our nice marbled ribeyes, and we'll use the other section for prime rib. If you don't have a bandsaw at your restaurant or a handsaw, you'll basically just have to cut between the bones and the ribs, like I was saying before. Mm-hmm. So it'll have to be a thicker prime rib. But I think especially around the holidays, that makes for a beautiful shared steak. So I did some of those earlier just to see. So this is about 2 inches. But very easy. Huge. It's just cut between the bone. But that's a beautiful sharing steak, right? Like 2 or 3 people, maybe even 4 if you had appies and stuff. Yeah. I would suggest for 2 people just to make more money off of it.
Taryn, I have done thousands of menus, and I've never heard of a sharing steak. But that's a brilliant idea.
Right? Why not? Especially around the holidays, right? Maybe a couple comes in for their holiday dinner because they don't have family around. You have this beautiful. It's a treat for them. Yeah. So this one, the way it's done, it's we've just Frenched the end of the bone here. And they often refer to this as a cowboy steak. So it's a prime rib that's been Frenched and it's extra thick. So they would refer that to as a cowboy steak. So I think those would be great on a restaurant menu for the holidays as a special treat. So so for that, what we did, know, right?
Hey,
So
Taryn, I
we'll
have a
start by
question
just
for you.
kind of trimming.
Sorry,
Yep,
I got
yep.
another question.
Okay.
I keep interrupting you. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I have a question.
Sorry.
Is it true that the bone brings a lot of flavor into the product?
Absolutely. Yeah. The bones
Yeah.
will always give more flavor than without, but I mean, so does the fat too, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
again, that can be a good reason why something like this leaner end of the primer, we want to leave the bone on to help with the flavor and everything. Whereas the more marbled section of it, you know, can be boneless. It's okay because there's so much fat and nice stuff in it too. But yeah, the bone will always give it a little bit more flavor. Yeah, so we're gonna just trim off a little bit around the outside. That's kind of like excess fat or a little bit of like felt left on from when they took the bones and stuff off. And then I'm just gonna go a little bit at a time. And now I did switch to my bigger scimitar knife for this. A chef's knife, a bigger chef's knife would absolutely work too. But the boning knife gets a little bit hard when you're trying to do so many little cuts. And I just took a little bit off here, but you can see it's not really the nicest thing. I wouldn't particularly want to eat that, so we'll throw that into trim, but that's mostly it. Because then when you turn it onto the top side, you want to leave more of that nice fat on the top there. So mostly just a little trimming off the side. And then we can start working on like Frenching the bones. So you could just roast this piece again, just whole as is. I would trim off the membrane from the bones on the bottom here, but then you would just flip it and roast it, season it up and roast it like that. But we're going to French it quickly to give it a little bit more of a nice display for the holidays. So where we want to French will just be on the lip here as well. I want to leave a little bit of fat around it so it kind of covers the steak. So I'm going to make my line just with a little fat left. I'm going to do a line straight down so I know where I want to cut. And then we're going to go all the way down to the bone.
Okay.
So my knife is now hitting the bone at the bottom there. Okay. So that we could probably almost peel off as we go. But then I'll come in with my knife and I'll scrape along the bone with my knife and we'll remove this beautiful chunk of meat. There's lots of meat and fat on here. So we end up taking off that little tail piece. So absolutely you can use this meat for your grinding. This fat, if you have a program to do rendering some tallow with it, that'd be beautiful. Or again, like I was saying, maybe a prime rib burger on the menu for the holidays, using all that trim and maybe some extra. But yeah, so now we have
Taryn,
that. Yeah.
The one thing I notice, and I think for all the people out there, especially young chefs and stuff like this, you pretty much throw nothing out when it comes to.
I mean, that's the goal, right? You know,
that's the goal.
you want to
exactly.
throw anything away.
But you know, like I've been in enough kitchens that there's always a garbage there.
Yeah.
And unexperienced will be thrown in the garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, again, you want to try to use everything. I think biggest things for me is we make broths here, right? So if you have a soup or two, you can have rotating on the menu with beef or pork or whatever you're cutting up, your chicken, right? Yeah. Any of these scraps, the silver skin, the extra bits of fat, the bone, like that can go into your broth. The silver skin you can't eat. You're not going to eat it ever. But putting it into your broth, you know, just gives it that little bit of flavor and adds to it. So you may as well not throw it in the garbage before you make your broth. Just throw it away after. So, yeah. So yeah, back to the prime rib. We got that one chunk, a nice chunk of meat off. And then we're going to come in between each bone and remove this intercostal meat in here. This meat, again, you can use in your grindings. I would just maybe try to take that membrane off, like I was saying, because that can be the part that gets disflavored or can go off a little bit faster than the rest of the meat. So we're going to come in between each bone and remove that little piece. And I'm just kind of going down to where I made that line, right? So that was pretty quick. You know, that really was just a couple minutes. The bones are reasonably clean already, but then all I'm going to do is just with my boning knife, we're just going to kind of keep scraping along the bone. Yeah. I would prefer probably to hold my knife this way again, and then I can get a more, like a harder press down onto the bones. But you can also
for inexperienced, a chain glove comes in handy right now.
Yes, sorry, I was going to say that at the beginning as well. So I think
we'll put a disclosure at the end if you have cut fingers and stuff. Taryn's fault.
So No. Not my fault.
There's all
Cut
these
meat
cooks
after
and
you watch
chefs out
this.
there.
Yeah, after you watch this video, cut me, and then you have all the information.
Yeah.
But yes, a chainmail glove. If again, like with this scale, if this is something you're investing your time into, is cutting and portioning your own beef, get a glove. You know, it's $40. It could save you and everyone trips to the hospital, just time off for your employees, right? So yeah, so I got the top pretty good and cleaned here. I'm going to flip it over and kind of just do the same thing on the bottom. And again, I want to find where my line was and try to make it as straight and clean as I can.
Does it come off pretty easy?
It comes off pretty easy, especially with the beef because it's such a big animal. I find when you start getting into lamb and you're Frenching racks of lamb, it's a little bit more intricate. And there definitely are ways that you can kind of cut and seam and then pull more meat off. I was also going to show you the little meat hook again is another little tool. This actually helps removing the membrane really easily.
Really?
And then if you can get into it, you can use this to almost just pull a section of that meat out of it too. So again, it's a pretty inexpensive little tool, you know, maybe $20 for one of these, and it can just save you some time over the years if you're doing your own beef cutting and trimming. So we got almost all the bones trimmed up here. And then the last thing that I will do when I'm pretty much happy with what I've gotten is use a cloth actually to kind of pull any little stragglers of membrane or fat off. So this is a good example. So on this last bone, I kind of have a little bit hanging off here. I'm going to use a cloth, and it grips onto the meat really nicely, and then you can just kind of pull the little bits off. So I'm using this cloth. This one is damp. Yeah, this one is damp.
Wow.
And that's what I usually do, but it just really helps to grip onto those last little bits of membrane. And you clean off the bones, and then you're sitting pretty. Yeah. Now I have nicely Frenched, clean bones. You know, you could spend a little bit more time in there if you wanted to, but after you cook it, it'll look basically the same around there. And then that's just like a slightly fancier roast if you're doing a party maybe that you can serve and slice at the table. So, yeah. Prime rib.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm blown away.
Good. And that, again, you know, that maybe took us 5 minutes to French those bones. And yes, I have done it many times before, but after doing a case or two, you know, you get into the rhythm of it and it becomes a lot faster. So I don't think it's so scary to do a few little things like this just to kind of amp up your holiday menu.
Well, Taryn, I'm blown away.
Good.
Those look so good. We gotta get the barbecue
I really
fired up in the back. Do you have a barbecue really at your butcher shop? Do you have a barbecue?
We don't. We have an underground parking lot behind us, so we can't really barbecue in there.
Yeah, we'll crowdfund for a barbecue for you.
Oh, thanks.
There we go. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Taryn. This has been outstanding. You educated, I think, a lot of people on a lot of things. Good. I think, you know, obviously takeaways is go and get a scale, right? Get a scale, right? The equipment is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you don't throw anything away, and I think a lot of restaurants need to look at that because the cost on this stuff is very high.
Yeah,
and we want to make sure you're getting all the use you can out of the products. So awesome stuff.
Yeah, just takes a little bit of time to make that extra plan, right? So you're not wasting anything.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Taryn, thanks again. Good. We'll have you back. Couple things, everyone. One, subscribe and follow. Right? The SVK Network. We're going to be back tomorrow with Kraft Heinz. They got some great stuff for holiday desserts. And we're back next week with more. And then we'll be wrapping up this first half of our second season of our SVK Network in the middle of December. So we got lots more shows coming. But thanks again, Taryn. And for everyone else, have a great rest of your day. And go and learn more about Butcher's Block Beef at Sysco.ca. Got some amazing information about our beef, and we're so proud to have it. And thanks again, Taryn. And
thanks, guys.
Everyone else, have a great rest of your day. Ciao.
Bye.